Hello, Michelle Houghton here. I am going to be playing today, and you get to see my playtime a little bit with a new stencil from Kraftin Kimmie. This little ghosty guy came out this month, and so we're going to be playing with that, and I'm just doing some different ink techniques. Now, alcohol ink in general is going to do the stuff I'm doing. I'm using Copic because that is my shtick. So I'm going to be using Copic reinkers, these guys, Copic various ink. Now there are new bottles that just came out, and I know there's a lot of hoopla about that. This is not about that. This is about the ink that's inside these bottles. I have the old ones still, and I will start collecting the new ones as I need them. But some different techniques I can do with a stencil, with alcohol ink, and then this is Yupo paper, Y-U-P-O. You could use any of the non-porous papers, so things like a glossy photo paper will work. Something less expensive and easier to get your hands on sometimes. But in this particular case, I have a big stack of Yupo that I haven't used for a variety of reasons, and so I'm going to use that today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to ink one or two of these up, and all I'm doing is taking a group of inks and dripping them on the Yupo. It is going to spread because that is a non-porous surface. You can see it moving quite a bit. It does not dry right away. I can encourage that movement by tipping if I want, or I can leave it sitting. I'm going to do a group of colors. So I started with that, and I've got them upside down, sorry. Whoops, making a mess, like normal. Started with the B24, I'm gonna go to the BV23. I'm gonna be a little slower as I place this color to kind of fill in some of those gaps, because I'd like to fill the paper with what I'm gonna do. So I'm doing that nice and slow. I'm trying to be extremely careful as I set my caps down off to the side, because I'd rather them not tip, or the bottles, because they're open now. I'd rather them not tip over. All right, so I've got a V17 that's being added in there, and I've got a pretty good coating going. I can smear them around if I want them to stay a little more separate. You can use an air gun or a straw to kind of blow them around, or just blow. I was really hoping to get a couple of those little dots filled in. All right, so this is very wet, and it's gonna stay pretty wet. And they make amazing backgrounds, but today I'm specifically playing with a stencil. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, while this is really wet, and again, I am trying things here. This is not like practiced or rehearsed. I'm gonna go in and pick up, and obviously if you're a person who doesn't like ink on your fingers, this is probably not a technique for you, or if you've got rubber gloves around, this is the time to grab them. So I'm going to pick this off, and my guess is, and it's doing that already, that's going to kind of smear back together, but I'm going to try and see if I can get it quick enough. Now remember, Copic ink dries pretty fast because it is an alcohol-based ink. So any of your alcohol inks, these will dry really, really fast. So I'm going to try transferring, and that worked fairly good. I have some ghosties over here. It's a kind of a neat pattern no matter what. I'm going to put a little more ink. I'm coming back over and picking up a little more ink on my stencil. And I will make sure to run through kind of results on each of these toward the end. So there's one. This has lightened because I've picked ink up off of it, but it's still a pretty neat effect. So I'm going to grab another piece of Yupo, and this you could do on Yupo or actually any paper. Now I'm going to turn this so it's ink up, and I'm going to set that down on top of the Yupo. And you could attach this one. It might be actually a little easier if you did. Before I knock my inks over, I'm going to put lids back on, making sure I get the right lid on the right bottle. Now for this next one, you can use the Copic colorless blender, or you can use plain old rubbing alcohol. Now this particular one is just a 70%. This doesn't work for everything, but for just cleaning off plastic that has Copic on it, it works just fine. So like cleaning my markers, it works. And so cleaning the stencil is going to work, but I'd rather not waste the ink. So I'm going to put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel, hold this down as best I can, and then I am going to push that ink off, just kind of circling. And it's going to push that ink off of the stencil and onto the paper. Now this particular stencil had some ink on the other side, and as I'm scrubbing and kind of circling around, the alcohol gets up under the stencil, so it's not a clean print, but it gives you kind of a neat effect. The other thing that's happening is the alcohol is reacting with the specific colors I used. It's also reacting to the Yupo. So we're getting all sorts of kind of fun variations in there. So there's a third idea. So we've got 1 and 2. This is the one that I stamped with the ghosts, the stencil, and this is the one where I've brushed the ink off and onto that background paper. And obviously we're not seeing really clear ghosts, but that's okay. I tried something yesterday and I'm going to try it once again. It worked once and then it didn't work the second time. Just a little FYI, you're going to want to put stuff down that you can clean up or throw away. This is messy, the stuff I'm doing, so just be aware of that. I'm just going to throw these papers away. So these are 2 sheets that I did yesterday, and I tried this technique on this one, and you can barely see those little ghosties. You can see little eyes and little outlines in a couple places. But when I did it before, it worked better, like the first time I did it. So we're going to try it again on this one that is truly completely dry. This is that same kind of slick paper. This particular, these two are actually photo paper versus the Yupo. If this works really well, we might try it on the Yupo here in a second. It's not completely dry, but it's getting close. So we're going to try this on this. This time I am not going to use the alcohol. I tried it once with alcohol and it did not work. When I tried it with Copic colorless blender, it worked. So I'm going to take this, and I have Copic colorless blender in this little mini spray bottle. I'm going to spray and get the stencil wet. So I'm doing that off to the side so I don't make a major mess. Not that I don't do that regularly. So wet with colorless blender, that is going to go face down, and I'm going to kind of push down just so it gets contact. Now, if you've ever played around with colorless blender on something that's colored with Copic ink, you can do things like with a wash rag and different fabrics, and it lifts up or pushes out that Copic ink. So my goal here is to see if I can't kind of re-liquefy some of that ink and push it around a little bit or pick it up a little bit. So let's see if we got anything. Well, it's more of just a shadow again, looks like. So we have some hints of the little ghosts, and you can see where they've re-liquefied, but definitely not as bright or as clear as I was hoping for. So not as successful with that. You can use one of those techniques and just color the, kind of smear this off again, find a different piece of paper. I've got this craft. Let's do this. Put a little more alcohol on my paper towel. And just spilled that. Excellent. There's not a whole lot of ink on here, so it's not going to be, it'd be fun to see what it looks like on craft. We'll let that dry and I will show you what that ends up looking like if there's really anything there, because that will be interesting. But of course, the other thing you can do with stencils is use like a paint or a paste and go through them. So we're going to grab one of these solids and we're going to try a couple different things on top of them. So ghosts on top. Then we need either a palette knife or a card of some sort that we can pull across. I had one here, but it has disappeared. Sorry about that. Hope you all are doing extremely well. Okay, back at it. Sorry about that. Wandering around looking for something that I can no longer find. I'm not doing an advertisement for these guys. It just happens to be the card that I found that I'm not needing at the moment. So I am using some paint. If I can open a jar. I've got a couple different varieties, but I have to see if I can get one open here for us. These are by Tommy Art. This is a Timberlow. So it is a shimmer kind of paint or paste. Not paste, I shouldn't say paste because it's not a paste. And I am literally gonna lay a little bit, tiny bit on there. And then I am going to use the card to spread that about smartly. So you want to hold those still. You probably are smarter if you attach it down I am whipping through this today so you guys can see a couple different things all in one sitting session. The fun part is if it doesn't go all the way to the edges, that's okay. Just kind of spreading that about smartly and then carefully peeling that away, and we have this really neat effect. The Timberlow paint is going to dry a little bit more clear. So at the end of the video, I will kind of give you guys a run through of all these different things and how they finish out. But there's another one. I'm going to wash this up real quick. There'll be a little pause and transition, and then we will do at least one, if not two more. I think one more. And then I will show you guys kind of the finished product on some of these. Okay, sorry about that. One more blank. This one has some of those little tiny shadows on it. This is not completely cleaned up, but mostly cleaned up. I'm using another Tommy Art. This one is a metallic copper paint. So again, I'm gonna basically put a blob kind of on one of these little ghosties, and it's gonna go ahead and start seeping through some of those spots. But this is truly just, it's a chalk-based paint. To my knowledge, these are still out there. They have been rebranded, so they will not look like the jars that I have. They will not have this white label anymore. Anyway, same process. We're gonna move that about. And I'm holding this down, but obviously you could totally do a little more with that. You could tape that down, tape it together. And then we have this kind of fun copper effect going around those dark blue ghosties. A different direction you could go is you could keep the paper white and then do a dark blue background. I'm thinking, no, I'm gonna make a mess. What if, oh yeah, let's see. Scrap paper coming back over. See how many layers of mess I can make before I destroy my table here. I'm gonna do this really, really lightly. This is gonna be all over me. You realize that, right? All in the name of art. Michelle is ruining clothing. Okay, so I've done super light, and my intent was not to get behind the stencil. It's to get on top of the stencil. So this is going to leave kind of an impression on there. I have no place to put this now. Huh. So scoot that out of the way. I'm going to have this major cleanup to do. This has a little copper on it, but not a ton. Paint down, and let's see what we can do. See, and this is what you end up with. See my fingers? Yeah. So you have to decide if you want to be running around with ink all over your hands and paint, and I don't really care. People know kind of what I do, or the people who I care about know what I do. So they kind of anticipate me being a mess most days, most of the time. And they're okay with that. They think I'm an okay person anyway. So let us see. Ooh, got to get that off so it doesn't dry. But that's kind of fun. The paint is already starting to dry. It's a chalk-based paint, so it does dry really quickly. And so it's kind of pulling and getting this neat ripple effect. I have no idea if that will stay. I'm actually assuming it will, but that would be kind of fun and different. So a bunch of different things. I'm going to try to set this aside. No, I have nowhere to set it. Okay, it's going back here. All right, so we have an inky background with copper paint stamped. So paint on the stencil, stamp the stencil. We have inky background, copper paint through the stencil, kind of scraped on there through the stencil. And yes, I realize I'm putting that on a mess. I have nowhere else to put it. We have inky background with the Timberlow, which is going to be that glitter. And we'll see how, I can't remember how clear this will dry. It might be more of a white, so, but that still is kind of cool. It has a really beautiful, beautiful shimmer to it. And then we have two that I got ink on the stencil itself. This one, I stamped it, so turned it upside down, put that ink down on the Yupo paper. And then this one, I put the dried ink face up, used some alcohol to brush it onto the paper below. And again, we're losing the ghost on some of these little pieces like this one. This one you can see them clearer, but in this one you lose them, but it's kind of fun because you see these little eyes kind of peeking through those patterns. It's fairly ghost or spirit-like. So I'm going to do a little bit of a roundup of things you could either, little simple cards, just using these little background pieces. I may or may not put stamped images on top. You might see them come back later with a little special thing from Kim later in the month. But I've got 5 backgrounds, and you literally saw the whole process. That's how fast it was. And fun and messy, which I love. I'm all about it. So thanks for joining me today. Thank you for sticking around for more Copic information and fun Kraftin Kimmie information as well. Oops, I forgot. I actually have a couple other little things I did with a stencil over here. So I don't know how usable these are, but I've got them. All right, you guys have a wonderful time. Everybody stay healthy and safe. I know right now, if you're watching this 5 years from now, hopefully this is all over, but right now we're in the midst of the pandemic of COVID-19. So everybody stay home, stay safe. we're hanging in there. It's been several months that all of us have been kind of stuck, and even as we've gotten back out, it's been pretty limited. So I'm hoping live classes will start up again soon and you guys will be ready to do some more Copic learning. But in the meantime, join me here. Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody. Have a happy, colorful day.